So here we are in one of the new dungeons coming in WoW Dragonflight. This is the Brackenhide Hollow, which is a dungeon that starts in the Azor Span, which is like the third zone of the four in Dragonflight. And as you can see, it's a 4-boss dungeon, and when you first load into it, you're met with this like Knoll vs Tuskar situation. So this must prelude to what's going on in the actual zone itself and some of the like bickering that must be happening between Knolls and Tuskar. So you jump into this dungeon and you can see at the top of the screen you have Tuskar freed 0 out of 9, and then you can also see that on the minimap that there are a bunch of like yellow spots, which is where these Tuskar are being held captive. So you have to release 9 Tuskar before you can encounter the first boss, Hackclaw Warband. And then once you do that, then you're able to like progress through the rest of the dungeon. Now this first area of the dungeon, it's actually really quite cool because there's tons of trash. There's like just so much trash in this area of the dungeon. And from my first encounters with it, it doesn't seem like it does that much stuff. There's like some frontals that you have to look out for. There's maybe like a few spell casts that you can avoid. But there doesn't really seem to be like too much stuff to worry about. Which is quite good, because in Mythic Plus you'll probably be able to pull quite a lot of mobs, maybe try and do some LOS tech. Though where you'll be able to do that, I don't know, because it's a very, very open space. But there's a lot of these encampments that are quite big and quite spacious that you're going to be able to pull a bunch of mobs in. So quite a cool little like initial area of the dungeon. So we find ourselves at the first boss, which is Hackclaw Warband, after we freed all 9 of the Tuskars. And this is one of those bosses, whenever you have a triple boss fight, kind of like in Iron Docks, right? There's always going to be a mix of things that you're going to have to do. So one of the mobs does like a chain of casts. So Trick Totem does these Earth Bolts and also has a heal effect. And then one of the mobs also seems to be jumping to different players, kind of similar to, I guess, Workshop, like the Cujo in Workshop, the way it jumps to different people and then hits them with a bleed effect. Does the same thing here with this guy. So 2 of us got targeted with that effect. So that's probably going to be something in Mythic Plus where you're going to have like these different things to interrupt. You're probably going to be like, you know, kind of similar to Morose, right? Like, oh, we could play Dwarf or something to try and drop that bleed effect. And so those are a couple things to be aware of in that first boss. Once you then get through the first boss, it's not too far of a journey to then get to the second boss. It's quite quick, like there's way less trash at that stage of the dungeon. A few different mob types that are quite cool. Like I quite enjoyed these mob types coming back into the game. I haven't seen these like treant mobs since what, Diamol? So really cool to see that kind of mob type coming back. And so far I'm like really enjoying the look, the appeal of the dungeon. There's like areas of the dungeon that have been dammed and like walled off and stuff, and it seems like quite a cool, unique dungeon. And I don't think we've really had anything quite like this, but it reminds me definitely of like what's that zone, Grizzly Hills type vibe. So really quite like it. But we moved then on to Treemouth, which is the second boss that we've opted for. I think you might be able to choose which boss you want to do second and which one you want to do third. So this boss has a big frontal attack, which is going to be focused on the tank, and then does a decay spray. Going to summon a couple ads, couple slimes, which will target certain people, and then they have certain spell casts. So this is, I guess it kind of reminds me of the first boss in Necrotic Wake. Then also we have this Grasping Vine. It's going to pull everyone in towards the boss. Not sure what really happens if you get pulled in. I don't think anyone in the group was able to actually do that, or got suckered enough to do that. But you're going to have to just be very careful with your space. I think that's the whole point, right? The room is going to fill up with this ooze, this defiled ground, and you're going to have to be just very careful with your space and your movement. So then we find ourselves at Gutshot. Gutshot is a pretty decent walk from the previous boss, Treemouth. So quite a long dungeon, quite a lengthy one. I could definitely see this being like, one of the longer dungeons in the pool. This boss, it seems to do an ensnaring trap, which will target 2 players. They then have time to account for the fact that that trap is going to be, you know, landing on their direction. They have like a few seconds to react to that, and then does a gut shot, which I think will be quite a big like tank buster, and a meat toss, which will target a player at random as well, and then a swirly will be created at their feet, and they have to just dodge that. But really looks like one of those bosses where you're gonna be able to avoid pretty much all of the damage as long as you're just, you know, like playing smart and avoiding those things, but you're gonna be able to see them way in advance. Another really cool thing as well, actually, in this dungeon is that's coming back is this decaying cauldron that's showing here. So if you have an alchemy skill, then you can make use of this effect, which is quite cool. Not sure what it will actually do. It says cauldron bubbles with reagents of decay, so maybe it like applies something to you in the group, which when you attack mobs, I don't know, does like a dot to them or something like that. Who knows? But could be interesting. I kind of like that stuff in dungeons where it's like a Court of Stars type effect. I think it just gives dungeons a little bit of flavor. It's one of those things where, yes, people are going to be demanding an alchemist, but you know what? People demand things anyway, so it's like, may as well open up multiple things that people want, and then multiple people probably have a way of, you know, being invited, and multiple people have a chance of getting in because there's, you know, multiple reasons why you might want to bring certain things. So, cool with me. But overall, the dungeon, the aesthetic, the mob types seem pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it. It's kind of hard to judge how difficult it'll be, whether, you know, it's going to need some tuning and stuff, because this is only on normal. This is in alpha. I'm sure it'll change slightly before release. But I'm actually very impressed with all of these dungeons and how together they all feel, right? The expansion is expected to come out within the next 4 months, but the dungeons so far, every single one I've done feels pretty much complete. It feels like it could be a live dungeon. So, really happy with that. But we'll go away now to Decay Triarch Wrath Eye, the last boss. And I think we actually ended up having a little bit of trouble on this guy. I think we wiped on him. We wiped on the trash before him. Oh, yeah. So these gas clouds get emitted around the room, and actually it's bugged a little bit, so you can't see. It looks like there's not a gas cloud in front of me, but there actually is. And so I go to like move through it, and then I ended up getting hit by a few mechanics. You can see these stacking dots on everybody in the group, just doing a ton of damage. So this boss seems actually pretty heavy hitting. There's like this big tornado in melee as well, which spawns around, so you need to be avoiding that constantly. So you have to be really careful with your movement. As well, these totems get summoned. And you're going to need to kill those totems, because I think that's what's doing the pulsing rot burst. So I think it's a control fight. It's a space awareness fight, which is cool, because that's pretty much what every boss in this dungeon has been. The latter 3 bosses have all been spacious fights and been aware of your positioning. So, cool with me. I like that. I always like fights where it feels like you can outplay it just by being aware, just by being kind of conscious of what's going on around you. But this is the dungeon. Hopefully, you know, maybe I'll play like a few little clips of just some trash packs and stuff, and just some different aesthetics of the dungeon that you guys can watch after I'm done kind of talking through. But this is the dungeon. I think we still have 2 dungeons that haven't yet been released, or maybe 3 actually that we haven't yet seen. But this is one of the concluding dungeons in this little series, taking a look at some of the stuff come in to us in Dragonflight. Hope you enjoy this.